Hello and welcome to Postcards from a Soul and Her Human. I'm the human, Gina. This is my second episode. I've been contemplating what I would speak about, and I just am trying to follow a process where I just trust whatever comes up. This is very new for me. If you've listened to my first episode, I tried to explain why I'm here and what my purpose is. And I'm still figuring out the format and really how this is going to go. One of the things that I'm noticing is that my ability to kind of let go of what my expectations are really are is starting to allow for another process that's much deeper within me to kind of activate. I wanted to really trust that whatever came out of my mouth would be what I'm meant to speak about, and so I'm going to stay true to that as much as I can. What's happening today is a lot of things are going on in my life that are brand new and that are really causing me to look at my language as much as everything else. I'm using different words in my everyday communications that I really never used before. When I listened to the playback to the first episode, I used I spoke about my spirit guides and my higher self, which I guess I surprised myself because I've never really spoken that way before. I've never really had an inclination, let alone a, a dialogue or about my own divinity. I've always been a spiritual person, I guess, not religious. I've actually religion meant to me. Uh, It was more of a tradition, the different types of religion, what people believed, but basically, to me, religion was you have a belief in higher power, and whatever the details or the semantics were really didn't matter. We all have our beliefs, and they all basically go back to the very same thing, is that we believe in something higher than ourselves, and I respect that. So I don't ever say that religion is bad or good. Religion is religion. You choose your path and whatever your beliefs are, but I believe that we all basically believe the same thing. So, I've never prescribed to a religion, although I was brought up Catholic, or I was told I was Catholic anyway. But I've never really gone to church or read the Bible. I've always had more of a kind of an understanding that I'm a part of something that is way bigger than me, and whether it's called or packaged in a certain way or not really didn't matter to me. So I guess my point is that I've always kind of believed in a higher power, somebody or something or somebody of energy that is really the core, the origin of all of us. And during the last several months of my experience with my own divinity, learning about myself through my own self reflection and through what's happening as far as my connection with my own divinity, is that, excuse me, that it's been really solidified the idea that we are all one energy, that we are all part of one fabric or network, or however you want to put it. And it's a living, breathing, evolving thing. And that, my own divinity is being communicated to me pretty directly. And I realized in that first episode I spoke about my spirit guides and my higher self, and I guess I want to talk a little bit more about that because although the language is new to me, it's becoming very normal very quickly. I find myself in general conversations speaking this way. And I have to get comfortable with it. So explaining this or understanding this, I guess I'm doing in real time. I'm being spoken to pretty directly by what are being identified as my spirit guides and my higher self. And my higher self is basically my ideal self, or the self that is elevated beyond this 3D world and is unencumbered by the 3D limitations, which would be our body, our mind, our thoughts, and everything that makes us human. So the atmosphere, gravity, all of it. And I'm discovering through these messages that I have a higher self. So this is the version of me that is unencumbered by the earthly 3D gravitationally restricted body or vehicle. And she is free of all that. So she has a much more pure and and light or radiant existence. And she speaks to me through tarot readings. And I know a lot of you listening might say, "Yep, that's I've had that experience. Yep, for sure, I understand." And there'll be a lot more of you that probably are going, "What the hell are you talking about?" you know, uh, Nobody speaks to their higher selves or to their spirit guides, not directly anyway. And I would be one of you months ago because I have never had this experience. Although I have gone to a psychic or two over my over the years, I have never had an experience where I felt so connected to beings of a higher elevation or um, divine beings, I guess is the way that I would describe them and how they're describing themselves in these messages. So excuse me. So I think that talking about this and explaining the way I feel about it is going to be helpful for me. And if it helps anyone out there, I guess that's a plus. But uh, I'm I'm being spoken to directly by my spirit guides and my higher self. I'm being spoken to directly by my spirit guides and higher self. So I said that again. And this is becoming normal. When it first started, I really was surprised that one of the first readings that I did was very general, but it spoke really to the state of mind I was in. It was way back in the beginning of my recovery. It was right after my ex-husband finally moved out of my house. And this was a difficult time because my ex-husband and I were divorced 6 months more than 6 months before he moved out. And it was very difficult for me to have him here. And I asked him several times if he could just move on and go. And not to get too deeply into that part of it, it was uh, it was very difficult to have him here and to try to heal and recover from what I had been through and what we spent 25 years together, 5 of those married. Once we broke up, it was a full 2 years before he moved out, and it was a very, very difficult. Was it 2 years or a full year? I think it was a full year, so forgive me, before he moved out, 6 months after we were legally divorced, and it was a very difficult time. I tried really hard to just maintain a superficial friendship, and we lived together, shared a house, and we shared a business, and I saw this man every day of my life, and my only focus at that point was to heal and to keep the peace. I didn't really have any other focus. But it wasn't until he moved out that I realized how difficult my life was with him still there. And it is amazing. I think I said this before. It's amazing what we grow accustomed to. We can grow accustomed to absolute misery, and we don't even realize it until we have something to compare it to. So, way back in the beginning, when he finally moved out, it was a very it was a devastating time. And I'll be honest with you, I ended up in the hospital. I had what I can only call was an energy break. I asked him to leave a few times very kindly. I wrote him a letter, asked him to leave, and he didn't want to go. And I understand now why he didn't want to go because I understand the type of person he is now much more than I did then. Of course, with the clarity that I'm receiving, not only in my life now, but in what I've gone through. And I'm going to say this again, and I'm going to say this every time I speak about this man. As much as I was devastated by his behavior during our relationship and even after, I care for this person more than I can tell you. I give him credit for, I think I put it the same way in the first episode, for causing my death, my emotional and energetic death, which allowed me to find the space in my life, excuse me, to be reborn. So I ended up in the hospital, and it was only after that hospital stay, which was about 4 hours, where I was completely exhausted and broke down completely, couldn't breathe. I thought I was having a heart attack. And I understand it was anxiety and it was an energetic break. Some people might call it a nervous breakdown. But I knew my energy had broken, and I had come to the point where I could no longer tolerate the misery I was in. And even though my empathetic mind and heart wanted desperately to allow this man the space he needed to move on, I knew that if I didn't cause him to leave soon, that I wasn't going to survive. And this is one of the issues with being a deeply empathetic person is I have oftentimes put other people's comfort and well-being above my own, believing always that I would be okay. This was the first time in my life that I was not okay. And even though there was no physical abuse in our relationship at all, there was a lot of emotional manipulation and there was a lot of emotional pain inflicted from the behaviors of my ex. And a lot of it was accentuated by my inability to take care of myself emotionally. So I will certainly discuss him in truthful terms, but I want to always remind the listener that he so much damage was done because of me, because of my desire to remain neutral and not cause problems and not be confrontational and not cause him discomfort, because it was always easier for me to take the discomfort on. So, although I'm not excusing what he did by any means, that's not possible. And that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this podcast and I'm writing the book that I'm writing, is because I need to tell my truth, because my truth will resonate with other people and they will get comfort from it. So, I will not candy coat what happened when I start to discuss more detail about that. But I do want it to be known that I'm accountable for how long I stayed in this relationship. And that accountability is what drove me to my self illumination and allowed me to free myself of the victim mentality that would have ruled the rest of my life had I let it. So I had an energy break. I ended up in the hospital. And it was only after that energy break that he left, that he got his things and left my home. And it was in that moment that I realized the devastating mistake that I made, that I had allowed my empathy and my desire to remain a calming and neutral subject in this chaotic time caused me to break down. So basically, the way I identify this or talk about this part of my life in my book is that he was the cloaked antagonist and I was the helpless empathetic. That's how I see that relationship at the end. Me completely incapable of taking care of myself, still relying on this person to take care of me, even though he told me at this point that he couldn't. So instead of being able to take care of myself, which was my core issue, I just collapsed. And after that collapse, and he left my home, I was in my own space for the first time in almost 26 years. And I could finally let my breath out, which I didn't realize I've been holding for so long, and that I could finally start to heal. And it's still, even the thought of it brings breathlessness to my body, because it was such a unbelievably difficult time. But until I got out of it, I really didn't understand how devastating it was. So, one of the very first messages that I got from a tarot reading And I probably should back up just a little bit more because I'll give you a little more context to this. I said I really hadn't had any interest or understanding of tarot readers or psychics. I had a little bit of experience, and it was mostly for entertainment. But I had a young woman working for me that I hired the week that I told my husband that I was done. The week that I told him I didn't want to try anymore, that I was tired of trying to hold up our relationship with my shoulders, and I felt that he was hanging off the back of it basically, and I had tried so long, so hard to keep us together that I completely lost myself. This situation went on for a long time. I left him 3 times before I finally let him go, and once I let him go, it took a year and a half for him to actually go. So, just to give you an idea how difficult that all was. But, the week I told him I was done, we had a couples therapy appointment that we did remotely because of COVID, and we were sitting together talking to this kind, thoughtful therapist, and just to make a really super duper long story short, and this is a story I'll go into at a later time, the therapist looked at my husband and said, "Can't you see she's emotionally starving?" And once he said that, my ex turned to me and put his hand on my shoulder and just said, he just looked at me and basically didn't know what to say. And I knew in that moment that I had to give up. I had to be done. So, so after that appointment, I kindly excused myself early from the call. And after it was done, I told him that I was done, that I was no longer able to continue to try to hold this relationship together. And I've been working on this, excuse me, for 9 years. Just to give you an idea how much effort went into this. So I told him I was done, that I didn't want to try anymore, and that I thought it was time for us to part, and that that was what I wanted. And it took a minute for me to really realize that I was finally doing something good for me. And the next couple of days, although difficult, I knew I had done the right thing. But it was during those next couple of days that I needed an employee, somebody to help me with my business. And we have still and had then an auction hall. And because of COVID-19, we were no longer able to conduct auctions. So we turned our auction hall into an eBay factory. Our main business is estate liquidations. So we get a lot of really great items from the houses that we clear. And my job as a business partner was to sell everything that we brought in. And my husband at the time and my partner, business partner, was the one who brought everything in through the liquidation. So I hired this young lady. I asked my daughter before, "Do you know anyone who might wanna work part-time to post items on eBay?" She said, "I have just the person for you." She offered me this young lady who was one of her good friends. I hired her within a few days. Within a week, she had started as an employee. And it was during her stay for about a year and a half that she stayed with me, a year and 3 months, I think it was, that I was introduced to, first of all, the material that I used to begin my journey of introspection, and the a tarot reader that she shared with me as really an entertaining, um, something to do to entertain myself. Although she said, this person is very accurate, so I thought you might enjoy it. And she knew what I was going through to some degree, not everything. I hadn't told her much in the beginning, but I really didn't do anything with any of the material or the tarot reader for a while. But once I started looking into the material, which I'm going to link in on my website and on the page wherever this is posted, a link to the material that I used, and I believe I mentioned this in the first one too. It's called The Gene Keys by Richard Rudd. It's RUDD, Richard Rudd, The Gene Keys. And it is basically formulated on your time of birth, your place of birth, and the planetary alignments and a lot of other um, science-based and fact-based happenings during your pre-birth and your birth. So I used this material in the beginning to kind of just understand myself a little bit more on an energetic level, and it really helped me to see myself like from a million feet, where I can look down at myself and see, okay, you're not, you are a type of person that is better suited for different types of things. It really helped me kind of roadmap through my recovery who I wanted to be and my whoever I was to be after this was all over with, after this healing took place. And I use this material to as basically a user manual of my spiritual awakening, and I cannot tell you enough how incredible this was. Not only that this material came to me at all, but that this young woman who came to work for me ended up being my angel. She introduced me to human design, which is the first thing that I did to map my energy type and to make decisions about my life in the moment in real time to reduce the stress and the anxiety and the pressure in my life. And then after I got comfortable with that, I asked her about another thing that she had spoke about briefly, which was called the Gene Keys, and she said, "Sure." Sent me the link to that innocently, and that became my Bible, and still is. I'm in the 11th month of my recovery from this divorce, and I still use this material. I'm on the final book, which is basically about bringing grace into your life after you're healed, and puts me on a path to really help with the healing of humanity. And this path to healing the healing of humanity has brought me to this microphone and to wherever I'll go next. So just to put some context on that. But one of the things she shared with me was a link to this tarot reader. And this young woman who does random readings, meaning or general readings. It wasn't a personal reading. And after a few months, I realized I had the app, and I went on it, and you choose one of the readings based on what you're drawn to, and I chose a reading. And this was within the first couple of months of my healing. And one of the premise of it was, is to ask a question, and I thought it would be fun to do. So my question was, will I be in this business with my ex-husband the rest of this year? Because at this point, I was questioning whether I should stay or not. I was devastated by what happened between us, and I was in business with this man. So even though I was completely broken energetically, I was still going to work every day. And this was the first person I would see and the last. And honestly, the person I spent the most time with in my life and still do. So I was questioning whether I wanted to stay or am I going to run. I wanted to make conscientious decisions. So I asked this reading, will I be will I be staying with my business and my ex-husband even after all this? And basically the reading was almost 20 minutes telling me that it's time for me to heal and to persevere and to recover and to not make any decisions and to just take care of myself. And I thought, well, that is a pretty appropriate response and kind of specific, and okay, I'll take it. And boy, that's what I did. And it wasn't until a couple of months later that I went to another reading, feeling a little stronger and being immersed in this material, the Gene Keys. I thought, you know what, let me see if anything's changed, or am I still on the same path? And let's get some help here. And that's when I got my first reading that really talked about who I was to become, and really talked about how I was going to be working in some sort of medium that would elevate my message, and that I would become a resource for others to find themselves, and that I would, I assumed this was my book. I was already writing an article. Well, it was a long article. The long article started about I think I mentioned this before too, a cautionary tale about the kind of relationship I was in. But after my healing began, it became much more than that, and it documented and continues to document to this day every month in journal format my healing, which includes the readings, which includes the gene keys and human design. It's all in there. And I was told basically that my message and me would be elevated and I would become this resource, and that I would leave my old life behind and I would be completely immersed into this new world where I was basically a resource for other people by telling my story in raw and unfiltered terms, which is why I don't edit this podcast. So the ums and excuse me's are remaining. The editing in my mind for what I'm doing, and this is nothing, no reflection on anybody else, the editing edits the truth out. And my truth is I'm not wholly comfortable doing this. And if I clear my throat a little more often, then that's part of this, and I'm not taking it out. My journey, my purpose, which I discovered during this whole Gene Keys study, is that I'm to tell my story and share my wound and my recovery. So covering that up or editing that out to me doesn't make any sense. And I'm doing my best to really honor this space by being as honest and raw and unfiltered as I can be. So forgive the ums and the excuse me's. They'll probably continue. Um, however, the first reading or two were mostly for entertainment, but it occurred to me after the third and fourth that these messages are starting to repeat. They are not just general, "You're going to be doing this, and good luck with that." It was direct communication about how I would do it and when I would do it. And I started to pay attention and I realized that, my goodness, I am being guided. This is not a general random thing, but this is guidance. And I'm being told that these guides are my spirit guides and my higher self. So, me getting comfortable with this language is really going to be an important part for me to communicate appropriately what I've gone through over the last 11 months. And that if I honor that, meaning I don't shy away from it because I may alienate someone, then I'm being true to myself and I'm being true to the truth that I'm here to tell you. That it's not just me figuring this out and hoping that I'm doing it right. I'm getting actual guidance. I was thinking about it this morning because this is starting to affect my business with my ex-husband, which I'm still his business partner. Due to these messages and the fact that I'm being guided to do this, I've actually reduced my workload and had a discussion with my ex-husband and business partner that I'm on this new journey and I need to dedicate more time to it. And I've dropped my workload to the degree where I can focus more on my book and on my blog and on my podcast. So I'm being herded to doing this, and I mean that like a dog herds buffalo. This is not, it's not an accidental or you may do this type of thing. This is what I'm meant to do. This is my purpose, and I finally awakened enough in my life, and this is why I refer to my spiritual awakening as part of the purpose of this is not to become a know-it-all or somebody who tells you what to do to get out of your own way, but to share a story that includes a really miraculous element, that I'm not here by accident. My life and my pain and my anguish, including my life with my ex-husband, was no accident. That I've been conditioned to do this my entire life, and this is the time that I am to awaken and do this. And it even sounds strange coming out of my own mouth because speaking it out loud is not something I've been doing a lot, but I just wanna be I wanna get comfortable with that so I can make you comfortable with that. If you're here to listen and you are finding this interesting or you are gaining some widening of your own heart or your own ability or your own capacity to take in what our lives really contain here, then me being honest about this and not shying away from what it might sound like is really important to this whole process. And if I'm to honor this, I need to do that. So I am being divinely guided to do this. And I'm really excited to talk about that with you in more and more detail. So, not to leave a cliffhanger, but I'm trying to keep these podcasts around 30 minutes or less. We're at that time. So, I'm going to leave it here. And I just want to tell you that if you're listening and you decide to come back again, I welcome you. I'm here for you as much as myself. And my goal is to be as open and honest and vulnerable as I possibly can and share everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly. If it helps one person, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Um, it's also very cathartic for me to do this. So I'm not only doing this as out of a sense of duty, this is really elevating me as well. So I want to say thank you for listening, for tuning in. And if you come back, thank you for coming back. And we are discovering this together. And we will see how this takes shape. And I trust that the shape it takes will be helpful, either in the big grand scope of things or maybe in the moment for one person. And my goal is just to do that. So thank you for listening. And I'll see you next time.